Okay, so I have here with me Brendan, who is, international travel. We've known each other for quite some time. Never really had the chance to speak. And I wanted to bring you on, see about your experience you've had, traveling through Russia and all that, because I think you have vast experience with that, especially now with the conflict and everything going on. So, tell me what you've been doing the past year.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me. I mean, we've been friends for a while. I followed your show. You always do a lot of nice diversity and different things. So this is fun. So this is my third trip to Russia. I've been here 10 months straight in this last one. I'm married to a Russian. My wife has dual citizenship, America and Russia. And it's been an adventure. It's my third time over here. I've gotten a lot deeper in the culture. We've used St. Petersburg where I'm at. Well, I was going to make the joke before when you called that I just finished wrestling some bears, drank some vodka, was getting ready to go to Ukraine, but oh, uh, but anyway, we've been using St. Petersburg as a base to travel. It's very easy to go to. We went to Paris and Prague this summer. That was fun. We went to Egypt. We love travel. It's not like we're rich or anything. We don't even own a house. This last year, we just chose to put a lot of our efforts and money into travel, which sounds kind of crazy during COVID. It has its challenges, but it has its rewards. Sometimes there's less people once you get there. Like we were in Paris in August, and the guy was like, usually it's just packed here, but it wasn't too bad moving around the city. So it's been great to travel, but yeah, this is my third time and my deepest trip to Russia, and I feel like I've hung out with a lot of Russians, learned more Russian. It's a tough language. Izvinite, я не знаю русский, чуть-чуть. I can speak a little bit of Russian here and there. But yeah, it's fun, and obviously a hot topic right now with Ukraine. I mean, Russia's been a hot topic, God, since I was a kid. Russia's been a hot topic, right? I mean, I grew up watching the Bond movies, and Russia was kind of cool, but Russia was dangerous because of the war and the conflict. And I'm actually trying to write my second book about Russia. My first one was about Asia. I lived 5 years in Asia. I guess I am kind of a travel bug. I'm addicted to stuff, but this time I am trying to dig into Russia. So hopefully you chose a good candidate to talk to.
Well, that's great. So I'm curious about Russia. I wonder. So how how are the people there? How have you seen some pushback on you being American? How was it like? Say the first time you got there, you got off the plane. How was your experience?
So it's funny, a well-heeled friend of mine back in Vegas, when I first was making my first trip to Russia, he's like, they throw you in the gulag. Don't call me. I'm not going to spring you out. Like he really had this idea that KGB was going to be waiting for me at the airport or something like that. So the truth is, and I'm happy to say this, that in my total of 14 months in Russia, I've never had a single problem, never a negative word. Russians are either very interested in you or they just don't care that you're a foreigner, but I've never had anything negative. And even when I was living in Asia for 5 years, Japan and Korea, well, Japan was great. Korea was great too, but once in a while, because it's some military stuff, there'd be a Korean that might say a negative word or this or that. I haven't had that here. And I've wandered a lot alone too. It's not just with my wife. Obviously, it helps when with my wife. She speaks Russian, but I've wandered a lot alone and I've never had a negative word. So that kind of just, people are people, man. They've got kids, they're going to school. Like, you've got a new beautiful daughter, and people are living their lives just, like we do. They complain about their government just like we complain about the government. When I first brought up something like we were having this problem in the election with Clinton and Trump and something, I was like, oh yeah, there's a lot of corruption, in American government. And they're like, you don't know corruption. We know corruption. Like they were joking about their own problems in their own government. So I, Russians are a little bit tougher on the surface. Americans are very friendly, very, very friendly. Russians don't have that overly friendly attitude. But once you get to know them, like you said in your last video, they will give it their all. They will go all the way. They will be loyal. They will be your friend. If they have friends, they will fight the government for their friends. They're very dedicated and loyal.
Yeah, that's what my father had told me. He spent some time in Russia, when he was in the Navy and stuff. And so that's what's kind of, his observations. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people have this idea, especially when it comes to, like, I guess the police in Russia, that there's this idea that there's not a lot of, like, here in the States, you get arrested, you're innocent until proven guilty, there's a process. And I think even when I was in Italy, I had this idea that Russia, they kind of just snatch you off the street if you say something against Putin, or if something goes wrong, you don't really get a due process. Is that kind of what you've seen, or is it really just...
I haven't experienced any negative stuff, but I still do hear that from the Russians, that there is some corruption there. For example, there was a big thing I live on Rubenstein Street in St. Petersburg, which is very popular for nightclubs and bars and nightlife and stuff. And they didn't want to obey with some of the regulations with COVID, with getting a QR code or showing your vaccine or all that. They didn't want to, because it was just, they lost a ton of business. So they just said no. And then the police came and kind of shut them down. And anyway, I would walk out my front door and there's like police and journalists and all this stuff going on for like a week. And so I talked to a bunch of journalists and they were like, yeah, we report on things, but the media still controls it. So it's not 100% free. And so it's not like it was in the 80s and 90s. Back then it was rough. There was a lot of mafia and a lot of stuff. But yeah, it is more oppressed than we are. The government controls most of the media. Although these days in America, sometimes it seems a little bit like the whole free speech or innocent till proven guilty seems to be going out the window a little bit, which I'm bummed about. The funny thing, my wife and I, we're both passionate about our country, but we're also critics of our own country, right? Like you were saying in your last video, to think critically. And these days in America, it's like, God, one story breaks and the person's canceled. It's like, what about due process? But it is still tougher in Russia. It is. And they admit it. They admit it. They want it to change, but the corruption is deep. It's going to take a long time.
Yeah, well, like you mentioned, with the media and everything, it's becoming a lot like that in the United States. It's very hard to compare the two. Like, everything negative you could say about Russia, you're kind of seeing that influence in the U.S. And with the COVID, all over the world, it's kind of become a little oppressive with regulations and stuff. So, saying, like you were saying, well, in Russia, they're doing this. And it's like, well, sometimes with these like vaccine passports and all this stuff, we're seeing a lot of that everywhere where you can't go in, they snatch you up, It's not
yeah, it's a hot topic everywhere, right? And the interesting thing is, ever since I started coming, and it was my first trip here was 4.5 years ago. I've been with my wife, we've been married almost 6 years. She was over in the US first, but my first trip, I've always noticed that the media really blows it up on either side. I would watch CNN and I would watch whatever other places, other sources, and it just seems like hellfire is going on in Russia. And even my wife would tell me, like, yeah, the Russian media makes America sound like, it just seems like both sides kind of pump it up for the ratings, which is a bummer because, it'd be nice if we could all get along, right? And there's a lot at stake, and but it does seem like there's a lot of overblown stuff, like you mentioned, which I was so happy to see your last video. You were like, people, let's think critically, let's look at both sides. I was like, yes.
Yeah, it seems like the leadership on both sides is kind of like become sworn enemies, like the Russian leadership and the US leadership, but the people don't necessarily have this sentiment, because my father was telling me, like, oh, after the US did this and this, the Russians hate Americans. And I'm like, well, maybe it's the leadership more than anything, because generations come, and especially the culture, that kind of influences each other.
Absolutely. But Vika, my wife, Victoria, Vika for short, she tells me that sometimes, like America media kind of puts down Russia, sometimes Russia media puts down America. But I'll talk to people in cafes, they're like, we don't believe that stuff. And they're nice to me. They don't care. They want to go to America. They want to see America, they're not a bunch of Putins running around. Everybody's not Putin, just like we're not all Biden and Trump in America. You know, I mean, heaven forbid if we were all like exactly like the president of our country. So yeah, I agree, man. The people I think can get along. Russians are very funny. They have that drive to them. They're very creative. They're crafty because they've had to be crafty in this environment. They've had to find the ways around. It's interesting that the infrastructure is still much better in America. You know, I mean, for a small example, walking down a sidewalk in America, if it's icy outside a business and you slip, you know, someone's going to have a lawsuit for whatever, $25,000, $50,000. Russia, it's like, tough luck. Their sidewalks are ice skating rinks. You know, they're I see old ladies walking on the sidewalks.
Yeah. So the social welfare, the social safety net, if you will. In Russia, you're on your own. So is there like things for food stamps? Is there such a thing as food stamps?
I doubt there's a lot less welfare programs. You know, like Vika will tell me handicapped people are pretty much screwed in Russia. You know, it's tough. It's just tougher over here. You don't have the infrastructure for the people. So as well, like Vika would tell me when she was in America, she'd be like, wow, this is really made for the people. Like, this is really not, you know, the libraries are beautiful and all these things, you know, there's a lot of things that, you know, we'll live most of our life in America, and I'm from Montana, and we like New York, we like Montana, we like, you know, infrastructure. But I will say here, St. Petersburg's a city of about 4 million in greater St. Petersburg. And I feel safe. I don't feel safe with the infrastructure. Some building thing falls on you, you know, you're not going to be able to sue anybody. It's just tough luck. But as far as crime, nobody has guns. Nobody's shooting anybody. My wife and her girlfriend can go out dancing 3 a.m. They can be anywhere in St. Petersburg, a city of 4 million people. And we're not worried. So I will say that I feel like, you know, safer here. There's not somebody, I don't know, it's just pros and cons. In America, we're kind of the Wild West. There's everybody's got their guns, and I'm from Montana. I understand that. I can grow up with it, but
I wonder why that is about crime. Like, it's very peculiar, because I feel like in Russia, there's a lot of poverty, right? There's a lot of, you know, separate wealth, you know, wealthy people. So I wonder how come there's not crime? You know, I think that was what fuels it here in the U.S., right? Or maybe it's more homogeneous in Russia.
Also, Vika tells me if something happened, like we lived in New York for a while, and we're going back to New York soon. You know, I would see some stuff happen on the subway all the time in New York. I mean, I love New York. It's a great city, but there's some rough edges to it, you know? And sometimes some stuff happens on the subway. And Vika would tell me when we're riding on St. Petersburg subway is actually beautiful. It's the deepest subway in the world, by the way. It's really cool. It's like way underground because there's so many waterways through St. Petersburg, a lot of canals. They had to dig it really deep. So it's the deepest subway in the world. But she would tell me riding on the subway that nobody would tolerate that. If somebody out of hand, a bunch of people would immediately stop it. It's something socially that you don't have to worry about one loony bin going off and beating somebody up or doing something, because everybody's going to jump in right away. And I don't feel that in New York. I mean, I like New Yorkers and it's cool, but it's kind of like, everybody's a little bit out for themselves, right? Because it's a big city. But no, that stuff doesn't happen in Russia. So it's weird. Even though it's a lot of better things in the US, I definitely feel safer here. Even in Moscow, I've been to Moscow many times, and it really relatively safe. I mean, of course, there's always a few places. Moscow's a big city, but you've traveled a lot. You've probably experienced different safety feelings in countries, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, lately it's been a long time since I've traveled internationally, but I grew up in Europe, so, you know, I don't know. Yeah. But as you're thinking about safety, you know, it's funny you mentioned that, because many years ago I was working at Dillard's as a teenager. I was maybe 20, 21, and I got jumped by 3 dudes. It was right before closing. Right, you know, and so I was putting away, I think it was somebody, and I had a long line in my register, and somebody had a return. So I moved over to an aisle to switch the return out, and these 4 guys, or it's 3 guys, 3 guys came in, and I looked up, I was like, hey, thank you for coming to Dillard's, whatever spiel. Got kicked me in the face, and they just beat the crap out of me. There's a line of 20 people at my register. Not one person did anything. So for like a good I don't know, it felt like 10 minutes an hour, but it was probably just a few minutes. Everybody just stood there and just watched because nobody wanted to intervene. And I was like, well, maybe that wouldn't have happened if I was a woman. But either way, like, there is definitely a look out for yourself kind of here in the US where people would never take the risk. Maybe it's because there's a lot of guns, so people don't want to get shot. I don't know. But nobody lifted a finger.
Is that how you got your MMA? Did you take MMA after that? Because I know you've done some MMA stuff.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I was paranoid after that for a while.
I know. I think America. Well, I really noticed the safety thing when I was in Asia, because in Japan was super safe. Now things have changed. I was there in around 2000, 2004. Super safe. But again, Japan is very much the harmony of society and culture. In America, we're the cowboy, right? Which has a lot of great things. We're independent. We do what we want. We're free. We're all about the freedom. But sometimes with those freedoms come other, liabilities, like less safety. Like what you talked about, that would never happen in Russia. People would absolutely jump in. So it's kind of weird to say Russia's safer. It sounds like an oxymoron, doesn't it? I'm sure in some other ways it's not, but in the society way, I absolutely believe it is. I haven't seen any problem or any bad thing. Everybody's, even on the subway, we've ridden the subway a ton. I've never seen something. Well, in New York, it was like guaranteed every day there was always somebody on the subway losing their shit, ready to do something. You're like, okay, I'm gonna stay away from that guy. I mean, I love New York too. It's just there's just different pros and cons,
Yeah, and I understand if it's like a situation where it's ambiguous. Maybe you're on the streets, two people are fighting, or a group of people attack someone. But if it's in a store and you're seeing an employee get attacked by more than one person, and a group of people standing there, it's like, it's kind of peculiar. It's more a situation where I would be compelled, to like, hey, somebody's beating up an employee, what's going on here,
Absolutely. But I can tell you, on the street, that wouldn't even happen in Russia because people would jump in. But I think they have confidence because they know everybody would as a society. They would just come in to help. That stuff just isn't tolerated.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, what about the Ukraine situation? What are your thoughts on that?
Interesting. I like how you brought up the border thing, and you were right. It does seem like a lot of their buildup is far from the border. One of the places was like Kursk, I think, which might have been a little closer, like 100 miles, but it's still, nobody talks about it here. Everybody's going on their daily lives. Most people really don't think that Russia's going to do anything. They just think it's just some kind of chess game, as you mentioned. I thought it was interesting that the own president of Ukraine was like, "Hey, everybody, chill out. Stop with all the inflammatory rhetoric. We've been living with this situation for 7 years. Yeah, it's there, but can we just chill it down? It's hurting our economy." So I thought, if the president of the country who's under threat of being invaded is telling people to chill out, then maybe, but people just don't talk. We really don't talk about it. They don't think it's going to happen. It doesn't seem to touch our lives very much. I will say that, Vika, Russia is a powerful country. Obviously, it has military, this and this. But honestly, I've heard that some of it is show, that they might not have quite as much as they show. I don't think they have some deep pockets in other ways, but unfortunately it's kind of corrupt, the oligarchs and stuff, right? But I don't think they quite have the military spending and stuff that the US does. So I'm guessing some of it's posturing.
Yeah,
but I gotta say that at the same time, and I'm sorry, my last point on it. I mean, obviously I don't want any country invaded. I empathize, with that situation. But I also don't know why America, like, why do we always have to be involved in this stuff? If Russia was on Mexico or Canada, wouldn't we be kind of like, or Cuba, like you said, we would kind of be up in arms? I mean, it's very complicated. Ukraine used to be part of Russia, and I'm not just trying to be a sympathizer here, but I'm saying it's a complicated situation. There's still families over there. They go back and forth. It's a complicated situation, and I don't know why. We got enough problems in America. God, we got homelessness, we got education, we got shootings. Why do we have to worry about these other? I mean, maybe there's some big military game of risk going on, and so maybe we do have to worry about it. But I don't know. That's my take. I wish the U.S. didn't have to be so involved. I'm not saying I want Russia to invade. I want all countries to have their own independence, of course. But it's a complicated situation, and I don't know why America always has to be involved.
Well, I guess, yeah. I mean, I was wondering, again, I guess you answered that. It's kind of the sentiment of the people. You don't see that people have a really strong view one way or the other. Like, we really, or support, like, hey, we want Ukraine back. Or they have a strong, or would they not be happy with the war and conflict?
They don't care. There's enough space in Russia. There's families over there. They really don't care. So I know some people who've got families over there that Ukraine has actually suffered since it broke off from Russia because of their economy wasn't able to support and it needed help. And so they kind of wished it would come back just to be under the umbrella. I don't know. But I don't think people really care. I mean, Russian people, maybe not the Russian government, but Russian people are very laissez-faire, hands off, live your life, do whatever. And there's plenty of space in Russia. Russia's got plenty to do. Nobody's chomping at the bit over here to have Ukraine back. It's already the biggest country in the world, and they got plenty their own challenges to deal with. So yeah, the people aren't up in arms at all about it. They're just going on with their lives.
Well, that's good to know. I think another thing that we hear a lot of here is kind of that there is a strong, growing amount of people that dislike Putin and kind of that he is very much a dictator. Is this something that you've seen, or do people overall, are they content with Putin, and kind of his leadership with Russia?
Yeah, I think 60 or 70% are against. Is my honest feeling. But just like a lot of people might be sick of, if we would have had Trump or Bush in for 6 terms, I think we would want him out too. I don't know. There are people who like Putin, Putin. There are some people say, some Russians, I've heard this from Russians, they say that there's so much corruption in Russia, you need someone strong to break through and to try to unite. Mm-hmm. But then when you need someone strong, it might, obviously bring other things, So I think a lot of people do want to change. I do think the majority of people do want to change. And that's just my guess. This last year has brought more protests that Russia has seen for a long time. There is really a feeling in the air that people are fed up with a lot of stuff, but it's tough, my wife thinks it's going to take a long time for all of that the turnover, the roots run deep,
Those numbers that's pretty high, 60-70%. That's crazy. Yeah. But I mean, he's been there so long, there's not really anything in place to change leadership. So if that was something that people wanted, even 90%, I mean, it would have to be a coup almost for something like that to happen, for leadership to change.
I mean, I think it's going to be, my guess is just people are going to have to keep protesting and just come out in droves. And a lot of people did do that. But I think it is riskier to protest here than it is in America. And it's hard, I mean, it's one thing to protest, but it's another thing to protest when you think you're risking your own, not your life. I think that Russia is gone. That's back in the 90s kind of Russia. But you might be risking some of your job, you might be risking some other business things, where you might lose your job or lose, I don't know, some kind of thing. And people, it's hard in Russia. They don't want to lose their jobs. They don't want to lose that. So I do think it's riskier to protest. Yeah.
It's a good thing that we protest in the United States, but it's sometimes frustrating that so much of media response is the only thing that gets politicians to do anything. And sometimes, people would just do things just to look good. Things will get ignored until somebody does a protest. And sometimes these protests don't necessarily represent the majority. So things change based on, protests or vandalisms that are happening here and there. And it's very frustrating. So in some ways, I like that, things have some continuity in Russia.
And I will say, even though I say it's harder, maybe that's part of my worry or a little bit old Russia. When that Rubinstein thing happened that I told you on our street, and there was police and they were blocking the bars so that nobody comes in, which I think that happened all over with COVID and different regulations. But anyway, everybody and their dog had their phone out, putting it to the speaker and the police. And I was like, oh God, I was thinking like, aren't you worried something's going to happen? Everybody was videotaping and taking pictures and talking about it. And it kind of gave me a feeling like maybe it's more open than I think. I mean, when those guys are donning all the military stuff, it looks kind of intimidating, and you have these 19-year-old with dyed hair, little college girls sticking their video camera in their face. I was like, okay, maybe times have changed a little. I don't know.
Well, that's good to know. Yeah. So, as far as like cost of living and housing and stuff, how is that in Russia compared to the United States?
A lot cheaper here, which has been one nice thing. We've been able to come over, live. Also, Vika's family's here, and we love St. Petersburg. So it's a lot cheaper overall. The only thing that's more expensive is goods that come out of the country. They're pricey, like some, I don't know, if you want some clothes that's, I don't know, not a big name brand, but a basic brand, a European brand, it's expensive to import things. Those things are more expensive. But food, housing, all that, I would say almost 50% less. Yeah, a lot cheaper, which has been great for us to be able to come. You know this because you're European. A lot of Europeans know that St. Petersburg is a very historic city. It's the Venice of the North, the window to Europe, But a lot of Americans, like I didn't know that before I came to St. Petersburg. It's really like the Paris to France, the Prague to the Czech Republic, the Rome to Italy. It's the beautiful historic city, and it's fun to be able to be here at a cheap price and go around and do all these things, and then kind of use it as a base camp to go to.
Oh, absolutely. I kind of think of it like almost, like you said, Prague. I think like Vienna of the East.
Yeah, absolutely. The architecture is through the roof here. I walk down the streets. I love it. I mean, that's why I know I told you before I was doing NFTs. I'm taking pictures all over this city. And I'm literally the only person doing NFTs about St. Petersburg. There's nobody else out there. I'm like, why? There's Paris, there's all this. So, I mean, I do travel NFTs. I'm travelnfts.com. I got that domain. I do a lot of different countries, but I'm doing all of St. Petersburg, and it's fun because I think it's a beautiful city.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll put a link of your work in the description if anybody wants to check it out. Absolutely. So are you thinking about staying in Russia? Was that something you'd ever consider, living there permanently? Or
we had thought about it. I mean, I do love America. I do love Montana. I love a lot of things about it. My wife speaks great English. She's really good with language. And plus she's been exposed to it, sent a little bit earlier on, than I. So my Russian sucks. If my Russian was fluent, it would be more tempting to do kind of half and half maybe. But it is tough. A lot of people know English, but it's tough to get deeper in the culture. Russian language breaks my tongue. I try to learn it. It's tough. So we want to have an international life, be in America about 80%, but we always want to come here, for a month or 2 months out of the year. There's a lot of great things in the summer. Now it's kind of dark and, we're a northern city, but the summers are beautiful. You got the white nights where it stays up. It's like kind of like some parts of Alaska. It's bright till like 3, 4, 5 in the morning, and everybody's out. The temperature's perfect in the summer. There's the canals through the city. They're doing boat rides. They're doing picnics. It's a neat place. So most of the time in the U.S., but a little bit in Russia.
So how's the tax situation there?
I don't know. I've
read somewhere. I've heard.
I think you mentioned that it was less. I remember, and I haven't researched that because I saved up a bunch, and then I've been just working on my second book and working on NFTs. So I guess I'll have to research it, maybe with some NFT sales. But I know. I don't know. Sorry, I don't know the answer to that.
Oh, no problem. No, I had read something that it was like a flat 12% or something like that. But, with the things you read online and then what happens can be different, especially if, different cities and different places in Russia have additional taxes and stuff like that. So I don't know. But as far as for...
question, I'll find that out. If we ever do a part 2 or something, I'll find that out.
Absolutely. What about for U.S. people? Was it hard to get an extended visa to stay in Russia? Because I hear it's harder for Americans, depending on your passport, I guess, or you didn't.
I can give you the whole spiel about visas. So before COVID, you needed a visa to get into Russia. You needed a special visa. It's not like you could go to Mexico or go to Canada or go to Europe. However, getting that visa is a piece of cake and it's a formality. If you book an Airbnb in Moscow or St. Petersburg, that Airbnb or hotel will write you an invitation. You use that, and in 3 weeks, you have your visa. So there's a step of paperwork, but anybody could get in that they wanted to. You just had to have a little invitation from anybody, a hotel or whatever. So super easy. After COVID, it was tough. But a lot of countries did that, right? So they kind of went up and down as far as what they would allow. Since I'm married to a Russian citizen, I had a special visa and I'm allowed in. So the first couple of trips I did, I had one of those other visas, but now I have that special visa since I'm married. So yeah. So it's easy for me to get in and out.
Say like if somebody wanted a second passport or was interested in a path to citizenship for Russia, is that difficult?
Interesting. Well, you could probably get it with some under the table bribes or something somewhere. I'm not saying, I've heard that from my friends, but as far as the normal path to Russian citizenship, I'm not sure. I think Vikas, my wife, said I could do it if I went through a lot of paperwork and paid some money, but I don't really need it because I already have the visa, there. I guess Steven Seagal, if you're a martial arts star, you can,
I saw that.
Get Russian citizenship. So I don't imagine it's too hard. I wonder if Snowden has it or not. I read the book Permanent Record. Have you read that book, Permanent Record?
I haven't read the book.
Oh, you gotta read it. It's a little slow at first, but it builds, and I think it's really good. I don't know how much you know about the Snowden story, but
I've seen all the little documentaries and the few movies that were done. The one with Gordon Levitt was pretty good.
I want to see that movie because I read the book, so I should see the movie. Was the movie good?
Oh, it was good. It was good. So what are your thoughts on that whole situation?
So when I first heard about Snowden before I read the book, I was like, privacy, we live in an age, I use Google for free, I use Facebook for free, all this stuff, whatever, people want to see, like, blah, blah. But then I read the book and I was kind of like, of course, he's the hero of the story, so you're going to be pulled in to him. But I did think he was a bit of a hero at the end, because I felt like he risked everything. He had a great position, and he did feel that the government went too far. And so, talk about a risk, exposing that stuff. I mean, it's a huge conversation. But every time I watched Edward Snowden, he usually makes a lot of sense. He's a smart guy. He's thoughtful. He's well-spoken. You read the book, you kind of empathize with him. He legitimately felt that the U.S. overstepped their bounds by being able to see into, and it's a big discussion. I don't know. The U.S. was the first one to come up with all the computer technology to do Google, all that stuff. They have all the back doors. I guess we want our country to have the back doors rather than other countries. I don't know. It's a big discussion, but I kind of liked him by the end. Maybe that was the power of the book. I think that I think he's very brave, and he gave up a lot of his life to try to make the government better.
So Russia's,
and years later they ruled in his favor. I don't know if you know that, but years later the courts ruled what the government was doing was unconstitutional.
Mm-hmm. So, but he still has a warrant out for him, though.
I don't know. Does he?
I believe so. I believe he's still. I mean,
right. You're right. He does. They were hoping he would get a pardon, but I don't know if he's going to get a pardon. So I don't know. It's a tough subject. What do you think?
Well, I agree with you. I don't know. It's definitely a risk. I don't know if he did it for the glory or whatever. It's certainly a big risk that he took. I find it funny he's in Russia, and it seems like Russia is very open to any type of dissidents or anybody that does anything against the U.S. They're like, come on in. It's also like, isn't it where they don't prosecute hackers? So if you hack an American server or you do something against American, you're in Russia, Putin has said, they're not going to prosecute you. which I think is a very interesting thing, and you know, may change a lot of people's minds that are considering where to travel to. They're like, okay, I got to cash in. Like we were talking, I think I saw somebody talking about the hack for the $3 billion from Bitfinex. I don't know if you read about that.
Oh yeah.
And they were caught laundering the money. And someone mentioned, why didn't you go to Russia before you started cashing in that Bitcoin? And that's a really good point.
It's still a wild west in a lot of ways. You can probably get away with a lot more stuff, especially if you have money. It's probably the truth. It's funny when you mentioned the Snowden thing. I heard from people that they knew, they remember when all that drama happened. I mean, I don't even remember when it happened. I heard about it years later. I was in grad school, lost and other stuff. But there were people who heard about when he was stuck at the airport in Moscow. They said the Russians loved it. They loved having this American guy. They could kind of rub it in US's face and we're not going to let him back. They just relished the fact that Snowden was there. But they treated him well, but I think they just loved it because they could kind of rub it in the face, you know. So it's weird. There's still that little bit of that rivalry. I don't know. Rocky IV, Cold War propaganda, you know, I don't know. But it's when I heard that they were relishing that, I thought it was kind of funny. But and it is ironic. But there's a great, if I ever met Snowden, I would love to ask him. I understand what he did in his book, but doesn't he think it's ironic that he's using Russia to hide from this? You know, I mean, he's exposing something, a country that has a ton of freedoms, but yeah, it crushed a few of those higher up freedoms. But then you're going to a country that isn't known for having a ton of freedoms, and then you're calling that, it's like the black calling the kettle black or whatever you call it. So it's just ironic that he's in Russia.
It's very ironic. If I had to guess, I would say he didn't predict that he would end up in Russia. You know, maybe when he first did, or maybe he did. Maybe it was like, you know, just
he plays it like he only thought he would be there for 3 hours. Now that's how he writes it. He had plans to go to other countries. He got stuck there. But that's just how he put it in the book. We don't know. He's a very smart guy. Maybe there was another way to it. I'm not sure. But yeah, it's interesting. I'm glad you know about this stuff. That's why I was saying you should be like the improved Joe Rogan or something. You should do that. I mean, I like Joe Rogan though, but I was going to say you could do the new thing because you talk about a lot of different topics and you could have people on. And I hope you continue this train of.
You know what? I really appreciate it, and I'll try. You know, I don't think I'm a really great interviewer, but maybe I can hone my skills and become a little better. But yeah, so we'll put this live, see if people like it. Maybe we can do a part 2. You know, can be a start of something new.
Hope I didn't piss anybody off. We're just doing our best over here, trying to build a bridge between both countries, bring a little peace in the world. I think the people could get along, so I try to promote that. So.
Hey, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time.
All right. Cheers.
All right. Cheers. Take it easy.